Father, we thank you, Lord, for your blessings. We thank you, Lord, for the Sabbath day. Please be with us, guide our thoughts, our words, our discussion, our study. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, I know some of you will be translating today, so I will try and go extra slow to give you time to translate. With today's topic, we're looking at issues of finance, business, etc. So I will endeavour to do my best, bearing in mind it's still Sabbath here in Wales and in other parts of the world, like in the US, it's Sabbath. So we'll try and keep the discussion as kind of spiritually relevant as possible. Also, I'll just put some provisos on our discussion today. I'm going to say on the outset that what I will share with today is not to be considered as movement positions. Okay, so please, just because whatever I say, don't take it as the movement's position. I will share as much as I can from biblical principles and principles from Spirit of Prophecy, and the rest will be my personal opinion. I may be wrong on some of my personal opinions, so it's a study. So if you disagree, by all means put it in the chat. So I don't have the definitive answers on everything. Okay, so I will do my best. For those of you that don't really know me, okay, you may know me as an elder, but you don't really know my background. I'm a qualified accountant, or I'm a member of an accountancy body. So I'm a member of SEMA. So in America you'd call them CPAs. So I'm a CPA. I also, for some time, for a number of years, I was a university lecturer in business management and finance. So I lectured for undergraduates and MBA postgraduate levels. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. And the rest of the time, really, I've been doing management consultancy. So I go into businesses and help their staff, mostly kind of training and development, to help them to be better business people and to run better businesses. So that's kind of like my background, which is what I do now. Okay, so the first question that we have, okay, so I'll read out the question carefully for those translating, is why is finance the second biggest reason for divorce? What's the big deal? It's just money. Okay, so I'll read it again. Why is finance the second biggest reason for divorce? What's the big deal? It's just money. Okay, so the first reason, by the way, for divorce is adultery. So that's been the topic that Elder Paminda has been discussing regarding that issue. So what's the big issue about money? Okay, there's probably a number of reasons why money is a cause for divorce. One could be depending on who's earning the money. So let's say one of the partners earns all the money and the other partner excessively spends all the money. That can create some tensions. If one partner wastes all the money, as in they gambled it away, or they lost it all or something, then that could cause resentment in terms of it's all your fault, we're in ruin because you lost all the money. If both partners are in a state of poverty, so each month they're struggling for finances, it can create tension. Can create tension because you can't buy the things you need, you can't do the things you need, so that can create tension. I think in many cases money is like tension. It's a tension factor that can just create irritability between the relationship. So it really depends what the issue is on the finance. Is it lack of finance? Is it who's creating the wealth? Who's creating the finance? And I think really it's more of a resentment thing that causes it. There's cases where, let's say, if the husband's a gambler. So if the husband's a gambler and loses all the money, then that could disrupt the family's life. So the wife will say, "I'm leaving you because we can't live like this." If one of the partners is an alcoholic, by the way, wives can be gamblers as well, so that's just related to husbands. So one of the partners could be alcoholic, wasting all their money on alcohol, and then that can create issues. So the other partner will say, "Okay, you know what, I'm leaving you because we just can't live like this." So I think there's a number of issues on that. In our marriage vows, one of the vows is, in sickness and in health, and for richer and for poorer. So from a vow to a vows, we don't get married because of the money, and really we shouldn't get divorced over the money. But I guess there's times where, as a family unit, one member of the family has to separate. In other words, to stop the financial drain. So, I'm not saying that's a good reason to divorce, but I think it's the tension it creates between people. So that's kind of just my thoughts on that issue, the strain it brings on family. I think in many cases it can just create resentment. So if one person has the money, the other one's spending it all on what they think is kind of frivolous stuff, then that can create tensions on both sides. This question then, so obviously I take it's from someone from a different country. So the question is it better to invest in another currency now, or is it better to invest in the future? I think the context of that was if a particular, hold on a second, I'll just check. I think the context of it is if a particular currency is devalued. So let me just, okay. So the full question is it better to invest in another currency now, or is it better to invest in the future, and what we should expect to have? A major devaluation of the money in Latin America, or it will not be so much changes on currency rates. Okay, so how I'm understanding the question is whichever country you're living in, is it okay to invest in another currency? The answer to that is, yeah, that's certainly fine. It can be advantageous to invest in a stronger currency than your domestic currency. There's no problem with that. And is it better to invest in the future? When we invest, one of the principles of investing is we are investing to get a bigger return for the future. So there's not a problem for that reason. But what you've got to do is you've got to gauge, if I invest my money in a particular different currency, is it going to be stronger or weaker in the future? So let me give you an example. Right now, the UK is going through Brexit or lack of Brexit negotiations. it's more than likely we are going for a non-Brexit deal. So we're going to have a no-deal Brexit. In which case, when that happens, so on Friday, yesterday on Friday, in the morning, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, announced prepare for a no-deal Brexit, and the British pound, dropped quite a bit in its value against other currencies, so it weakened. And if we have a no-deal Brexit, which is like 99% certain, as soon as that decision is made, the British pound will drop in value. That will just happen, and then over time, it will probably increase up, but it will devalue immediately. Other issues, like with the United States of America, at the moment the policies that the government has and the Federal Reserve has is that the American dollar has devalued. It's gone weaker, and that's been an intentional decision by the government and by the Federal Reserve to deliberately weaken the dollar because they want to. Someone's WhatsApping me. It's going to be difficult for me to check the WhatsApp, so please, if you could just WhatsApp the questions to Brother Leon or put it into the chat box, okay? Because it'll be difficult for me to keep going back onto WhatsApp. So it's okay to invest in another currency. You just got to make sure that you have confidence that that currency will remain stronger against your home currency, for the foreseeable future. So bear that in mind. It's a good time to buy dollars. Sometime in the future, the dollar will go strong, and then you'll get a return by selling the dollars back into your currency. Okay, so in other words, it's okay. You can invest in another currency. It's not a problem. Okay, next question. Okay, what can I do with my offerings if my ministry is not active and have no need of spending money on ministry work? Do I send my offering to other ministries that may need support, or hold on to my offerings until my ministry begins to use their finances? Okay, that's a difficult question. All right. I'm sure I'm going to have global elders and ministry leaders come and tell me off. All right, so I'll give you my opinion. Okay. If your ministry is not active for whatever reason, then what you can do, I wouldn't. This is my opinion. Okay, I wouldn't have an issue personally if you wanted to send that money to another ministry that may be in need. If you are in any doubt, you could always contact the Elder Tess or Elder Perminder. Say, look, I've got some offerings money. Our local ministry is not active at the moment. Is there any specific need in the worldwide field that I can put my money to? Okay, and then you can ask them where you can direct it to. I'm sure they would give advice. Do I send my offering to other ministries that may need support, or hold on to my offerings until my ministry begins to use their finances? No, I think it's okay to send it to where it's needed. Again, if you've got any doubt, you don't want to cause any offences, just tell the local ministry this is what you're going to be doing. All right, and just explain, look, I'm going to put my offerings elsewhere until you're ready for action. Otherwise, there's no point having a ministry where things are just storing up and just gathering dust and not doing anything. And then you need to petition the ministries. Why are you not active? That's another issue, isn't it? If you're inactive, why are you inactive? you need to pull your socks up. Whichever minister it is, I don't know which minister it is, but they may be referring to. So yeah, I think it's important that your offerings are being used, and obviously we're in a kind of very kind of strange times with COVID, where a lot of things have just shut down. A lot of travel's closed down. Many of the fellowships haven't been open because of either government legal requirements or just for safety issues. So things have slowed down, quite a bit. Okay, hope that answers that question. Okay, next question. What we should expect to have a major devaluation of the money in Latin America, or if it will be so much changes in currency rates. Okay, so with currencies, can get stronger and weaker for many different reasons. Can be political reasons, can be revolutions, it could be economic reasons. Most of the time, a particular currency will be affected by political news that will have an effect. Will there be major devaluation of money in Latin America specifically? Not necessarily that I'm aware of, but with most currencies, they tend to eventually over time get back to where they were before. So if a currency devalues, it should sometime over a period of time, maybe a couple of years, should eventually go up, but it could be a long time. I'll give an example. A couple of years back, Switzerland made a decision to have negative interest rates, and that had the effect of crashing their currency. The strength of their currency crashed, and it is still low. It will take many years for it to go back to where it was before. So if there is a major devaluation, it could be years before it could recover. If you do have doubts about your currency, then you can change it or store it into a stronger currency. So, okay, next question. Are offerings mandatory? I'm going to say yes, they are. Even though the Bible doesn't specifically say it's mandatory. Tithe is mandatory. And so we tend to give tithe because we have to give tithe, but we may hold back on our offerings because we may feel it's not mandatory. But I'll say offerings is mandatory. Without offerings, without tithes, the whole machinery of the movement comes to a standstill. So we need offerings to support local fellowships, to pay for rent, to pay for expenses, to pay for speakers. So I'm going to say, yeah, offerings is mandatory. And I know many fellowships have not been meeting because of the virus, but it doesn't mean we have to stop giving our tithes and offerings. I know in African countries we can use like M-Pesa, where we can transfer funds over the phone to our treasurers. So I would encourage that. So not to sit in your offerings, but to send it to your treasurers. And in other countries, then you can do bank transfers. So don't just necessarily sit on your offerings and your tithes. And if you like for us in Welsh Fellowship, we haven't been to church since March, and it could be a tendency that we're not paying our offerings. So it could be a good thing just to put a little bit aside on our offerings, or transfer it directly into the Treasury bank account. So that way, then you are still giving the offerings, even though we're not meeting. Okay, next question. When should you give offering, and when shouldn't you? What's an advisable amount? Okay, when should you give offering? Obviously, the natural, sensible approach to collecting offering is on Sabbaths, when we meet as fellowships. So we would collect our offerings then, and our tithes, and that's just kind of a natural, convenient way to do it. And by the way, giving offerings and giving tithe is an act of worship. I know some people may argue that it's breaking the Sabbath, giving tithes and offerings on the Sabbath, without getting into tangled arguments with people. If they feel strongly about that, well, give your tithes and offerings on a different day. But giving tithes and offerings as part of stewardship is an act of worship. So I don't have a problem. When shouldn't you give offerings? In my okay, let's think about this. For me personally, you put your money where there's activity, okay, where it's needed. So I wouldn't personally put money where there's ineffective work, or lack of work. Because if there's no work being done, then what am I putting my money into? I wouldn't put my money to support any apostate movements. I wouldn't put my money to support any apostate workers or apostate leaders. There's no way I'd put my money to that. If there was someone who I knew to be in apostasy, and they needed money for a mission project, I wouldn't give it. I wouldn't support it. If there was an apostate leader and they needed money, financial support, because they got no money, then 99% I would not have sympathy in that sense. In other words, I can't with clean conscience use the money God has given me to help an apostate person. That's kind of like how I feel in it. In other words, I can't support someone who is spreading apostate principles. I can't use my money to support that in any way. What is an advisable amount? The Bible talks about 10% tithe, and the Jewish system used to have 5%, so they would allocate 5% of the income for offerings. So 5% is okay, but I would advise giving offerings, giving what you can. Offerings, you need to be given with a cheerful heart. You need to be a cheerful giver. So give what you can afford. If you can afford it, then give it. If you can afford more, then sure, give it. But 5% is okay. As an average, as a guideline. Next question. What's your advice on setting up a business or setting up businesses? Is it advisable not to work with brethren on the message? Or should you work with them? Is it down to individual merits rather than being on the message? Okay, so this is a loaded question. The first part of the question, what's my advice on setting up a business? No problem. There's advantages and disadvantages to having your own business. And you just have to be happy in yourself that you're worked out for you. There's more advantages and disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage of having your own business is when you go on holiday, who's running your business? So that's one issue. If you get sick, what happens to your business? At least when you're working for an employer, you get sick leave, you get holiday leave. So these are things just to think about. Is it advisable not to work with brethren on the message? It's really a trust issue. Do you trust them? Do you not trust them? Working with brethren can be difficult because if brethren take advantage of you, what recourse do you have? If you loan something to a brother or sister and they refuse to pay, your recourse is difficult. Unless you take them to court, and then you're going to take your brother to court. It can get a little bit messy. Or should you work with them? To be honest, there's no right or wrong. It's nice if you can work with brethren. It's nice if you can work together. It's nice that you can work with people you trust. Is it down to individual merits? I think so. Just because, brother X or sister Y is on the message, I may make an assessment and think, yeah, you know what, I love them. They're my brother. They're my sister. But I don't really have confidence in them to know how to run a business or how to manage business decisions. So yeah, I love them, but no way am I going to work with them on a business because I don't have confidence in their business abilities. So that's fine. So that's the important thing, really, on their merits. And if the message, yeah, then that's a bonus. And I'll add, should we work with people not on the message? Should we work with people who are not Christians or Adventists? I would be very careful about. I'm not saying you necessarily don't do it, but be very careful the type of business operation that you open with a non-believer. I would never go into a legal partnership with a non-believer, but I probably wouldn't have an issue being a director of a company with non-believers. In other words, there's 4 directors in the company. I'm a director, and there's 3 other directors who are not on the message, who are not Adventists. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that because the legal setup, the legal operation is different in that scenario than being a legal partnership where you could be legally liable for your entire estate for the actions of your business partner. And it's happened many times where business partner runs away, commits fraud, and then the other partners become liable for the actions. So be careful with that. Okay, next question. Can somebody do a business of eggs, restaurants, or butchery? Yeah, okay. So butchery, I would say. First of all, I will put some provisos. If the only job you can get is butchery, in other words, if you didn't have the job in butchery, you'd be out on the street begging. Then I wouldn't say no. Don't take the job. Okay, so if it's the only job you can do, then sure. However, as a general principle, I'll say do not get into butchery. Ellen White talks about the business of animal husbandry, in that the character of the butcher, when you're killing the animals and you're cutting them up, it has an effect on their character. So if you're a vegetarian and then you're cutting up these animals, it's going to have an effect on your character. So my advice would be, if you can, stay away with it. Again, with a restaurant, if it's your restaurant business, you've got to think about, well, why am I doing it? Is it just a business because I know how to cook? Am I going to serve meat? In principle, I wouldn't say it's bad to have a restaurant when you're going to serve meat, because you can have a restaurant as a business, and it's totally your business. It's not a ministry. It's not a. I mean, if you're going to say this restaurant is my ministry, and then you're serving up chicken and stuff like that, and say, well, think twice. But then I think if you're going to run your restaurant, you still have to run it on God's principles. In other words, are you going to serve pork? Are you going to serve, pig, unclean foods? Are you going to open on Sabbath? So these are things you need to think about. And of course you shouldn't serve the pig. You shouldn't serve the unclean foods, and you shouldn't open on Sabbath. But in principle, if you have a restaurant, I can't say it's wrong to open a restaurant. And if you're going to serve chicken and eggs and stuff, then I'm not going to say what you're doing is necessarily wrong. It's your business. But another principle is, are you going to serve people that things you're not going to eat, that you're not going to do? Okay. And then with the eggs business, again, if that's the only business that you have, then okay, fine. I mean, I know, especially in some African countries, eggs is big business. You have chickens, and you have a lot of eggs, and you sell the eggs. So again, if it's a profitable business and you don't feel you're violating any principles, then yeah, I think it's okay. I know someone asked me, in an African country, the only job they can get is working for a pig farmer. So it's not actually their own business. They're actually working for a pig farmer, because it's the only job they can have. And they asked me, should we quit our job, in that instance. And my advice really was to them is, if I was in that situation where the only job I could have is working for a pig farmer, then I would, stick with that job and pray earnestly for, another job. Ask God, can you find me another job? So I wouldn't want anyone to resign from their jobs, and then be unemployed and starving because that's the only job they could have. I remember I had a discussion with a conservative Adventist, and they were out of work. They were really on the poverty line, and I said, look, you need to lower your standard a bit. What job you're going to have? So I said, if I was in a situation where I didn't have any money, I didn't have any work, I would have no issue working in a fish and chip shop, or in a kebab takeaway restaurant, even though I don't eat the fish or eat the kebab myself. If that's the only work I would do to provide for my family, then I would do it. So sometimes we need to think about, do we have sometimes misguided conscience? In other words, we may feel uncomfortable about something because of our doctrine or our philosophy, as opposed to actually being a God-given principle. Yeah. So I hope that answers that question. I mean, me personally, if I was going to open a restaurant business, I would make it a vegetarian restaurant. But again, if it's the only work I can do, I mean, what's the point of having a vegetarian restaurant and no one comes to it? I'm just going to have to close the business down, isn't it? So, but I think what we tend to do, we tend to blur it. So if I was to open a vegetarian restaurant, I'll say, hey, look, come to my ministry vegetarian restaurant. It's a ministry, and now I've blurred it between ministry and business. So let's just keep those boundaries. Is it ministry or is it a business? Okay. Next question. Would you recommend to invest one's savings in stock, real estate, etc.? I've often considered it instead of simply having money in the bank. But the thought of Christ's fast return has made me think it won't be of benefit to me as I'm thinking to invest long term. Okay. Firstly, none of us really know when Christ is coming back. We don't know. We could still have a few years yet. So we don't know when Christ is coming back. When I first became an Adventist, nearly 30 years ago now, so I've been an Adventist pretty much, probably 30 years now, and I thought the Lord was going to come like in months, and I was already, I remember that time making financial decisions that, Christ is going to come in months, Christ is going to come like in the next year or so, and now I'm 30 years on, and if I'd have kept that kind of philosophy, I think I would have been a bit of a mess. So I remember the thought of buying a house years back was scary. Having a mortgage, having debt, it was a scary thing. But we need a place to stay, and I figured it's cheaper to buy a house than to rent a house. However, when I bought my house before I was married, so I bought a house before I was married. As soon as I bought the house, I made it a priority to clear the debt as fast as I can. In other words, I would accelerate payments to my mortgage. I would always try and find ways to save money. So I think I put on the forum a little booklet, an old booklet I did on household budgeting. So when I'd go shopping, I would always buy things on sale, buy one get one free, buy one get one half price. When I needed shoes or clothes, I'll go for the for sale section first. So I'm always looking for the bargains. In other words, I'm trying to increase what's left over after my immediate bills, net disposable income. Then what I would do with that income, then I can make extra payments against my debt, and then some of it I could invest, for the future. Some I'd put into the work, and others I'd keep, immediately for a rainy day fund. So the thing I would say then really when it comes to money is don't just leave the money in the bank, because when you leave all your money in the bank, you're not really earning much interest. Okay, banks are pretty much I know it's like in other countries, but in the UK, is if your savings or investment is in an organisation which is registered with the Financial Conduct Authority, then there's a guarantee of your funds up to £80,000. So in other words, if I had £80,000 in my local bank and the bank collapsed, then the government would pay me that £80,000. So there is protection there, but you don't earn much interest in the banks. So I'm a firm believer in having what I call a balanced portfolio. So in other words, every individual has what I call different risk appetites. So many of us have different food appetites, but each of us have different risk appetite. In other words, some people like to take more aggressive risk, and other ones take low risk. So when you invest in the bank, it's very low. In fact, it's practically zero risk investing in the bank. Okay, money in the bank. When you invest in real estate, it carries a little bit of risk. Property values can come down. In the most part, property values actually go up. And again, when you invest in stocks and shares, the stocks and shares can go down, and stocks and shares can go up. Or you can have balanced portfolios where you invest in a number of different stocks and shares. And in the UK, the government has what's called ISAs. So in other words, the income you earn or the gains you earn from the investments are tax free. So I don't have a problem investing in stocks, real estate. It's fine. Bear in mind it carries risk. And yeah, crisis come back in. So ultimately, you can think, what am I investing for the long term? The only reasons why I would invest for the future is one, for retirement. In other words, when you come to a point where you can no longer work, yeah, you need to be able to have some kind of income that you can sustain yourself and your family, knowing that you don't have any work coming in or employment income. That's one issue. The second issue is obviously funding for any mission projects or funding for God's work, and I think that's the important thing not to forget. The other thing I would always make a priority, my advice to people, is before you worry about doing lots of investments, is pay off all your debts first, pay off all your mortgage, pay off all your loans first. And if you have a little bit of spare, then yeah, by all means put it into an investment that hopefully may make you a little bit extra that you can use then to accelerate payments against your debts. Okay, I hope that answers that question. And when it comes to investments, bear in mind you can lose all your money in investments. You can have a market crash, and you could lose things. Okay, but in market crashes, not all the stocks, by the way, crash in a market crash. In other words, when a market crashes, there's some stocks and currencies that do very well in market crashes. So depending on what you invest in. Okay. Should we be expecting a global financial recession crisis in the imminent future as we experienced in 2006? So I suspect the person making reference to actually 2007, 2008 financial crash. We are actually already in a global financial recession, by the way. Should we expect a global financial recession? Yes and no. For example, if you look at the time of Noah, things were going great. When the close of probation came, everyone was doing really well in their businesses. They was thriving. There was lots of money going around, and we were talking about it earlier today. When Ellen White talks about when there's national apostasy, there's national ruin. But what does that actually mean? We've always assumed that national ruin is financial. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But just because there may be a global financial recession, we can actually prepare for that in many ways. And the most crucial aspect to prepare for any global recession is to be debt-free. If you are debt-free, when you're debt-free, if you're debt-free, then you can be safer to to ride out, if I can say the recession. It's only those people who are in massive debt are the ones that suffer the most in financial recessions. So try and clear all your debts, be debt free. So in the event, say you lost your job, then all you need is a little bit of money really is to provide for bills and provide for food. And we can always have watered down porridge, or hummus and bread to ride us through if things get tough. So yeah, I think there will be global recessions, and I think someone was asking me, are we expecting another major crash? And I say yes, but people have been saying we're going to have a crash for years. We had a bit of a crash in March over the virus. I think there's no reason to say we won't have a bigger crash than that. But when, I don't know. But even if we have a crash, if we're sensible, we live within our means, we haven't put all our eggs in one basket, we've cleared all our debts, that even if there was a financial crash, then we should be able to survive that. Next question. What is the best way to save up money? What to do with the saved up money? For example, would you advise to just put it in the bank, or somehow make the money work for you and thus passively increase? Okay, what's the best way to save up money? It depends how you earn your money. If you earn your money weekly, set some aside weekly. If you earn your money monthly, set some aside monthly. If you earn your money as a contractor or self-employed, then I would put aside chunks of money, for when you may not have work. When you're working for yourself, it's a lot more difficult to plan ahead, because you don't know when your next income's going to come. But you want to be stacking as much money away you can, to provide for times when you're not in work. So what's the best way to save up money? Just put it aside. What to do with it? Again, I would put it into a balanced portfolio. So section out some for offerings, section out, take your tithe out, maybe put something for special missions, and then leave some in the bank. Use a lot of it to clear off your mortgage and your debts, and maybe have a little bit for your retirement. So I would balance it out that way. And for me, I got no issue with making your money work hard for you. In other words, passive income. So you can put it into investments, which will give you a return on your money. And obviously, you can do low risk investments, and you can do higher risk investments.
Can you give some examples?
Give some examples of high risk investments. So, for example, paying off your debt is a good low risk investment. It's a very good investment to pay off your mortgage, for example. That should be a priority if you have a house. Then in the UK, we have something called like premium bonds. So premium bonds is where you lend money to the government. You don't earn any interest, but you can take your money out any time. But what the government does, instead of paying you interest, is they'll every month they'll put your certificates into like a drawer, and they'll have monthly draws, so you could win £25, £50, all the way up to £1 million. So to me, that's very low risk investment. I could stick my money into what's called kind of unit trust, so your money is diversified into different shares. I could invest my money directly into what's called like the Dow Jones or the Nasdaq or the FTSE 100. I could do it that way again, which is kind of balanced across a number of different stocks, or I can invest directly into stocks. So, for example, right now there's a big interest in vegan foods, vegetarian foods. Some months back, for example, there was what's it called, Beyond Meat. Were making fake, vegan meat. The stock price was low, and I thought, what, I'll stick 100, 200, I think I stuck about like £200 into it, bought £200 shares, and I doubled my money. So I made £200 on that one. So there's certain things, there's certain industries. So food industry are lower risk because everyone needs food. I'll probably get hate mail for this, but pharmaceutical companies, medicine companies, they're always needed. So there's certain companies which are kind of high risk and lower risk. Right now, travel industry was high risk. The shares plummeted, and we didn't really see this pandemic coming and the effects it's had on certain things. And by the way, I want to stress this as well. that even if you've got some investments and there's a crash, you only lose the money. You only lose the money when you sell those shares, when you cash in. So if you don't cash in and you ride out a storm or you ride out a crash, you can actually get the money back. It doesn't mean you've lost the money. So even if you're caught up in a crash, all right, it doesn't mean you've lost the money. It just means that on paper you've lost the money, but in reality you haven't lost the money. Okay, so hope that helps. And by the way, even if you look at the biblical principle of the three servants, and God gave them one talent, another one 5, and another 10 talents, and the master expected them to invest those money either into good sound investments, or was a worst case just give it into the bank, to earn a little bit of interest. But to make that money work, is not wrong, okay. But I want to put a proviso that we're ethical about what we do, we're honest about what we do, and obviously I wouldn't recommend you invest. You certainly wouldn't want to invest things, into directly into alcohol companies or tobacco companies or pornographic entertainment type things. There's certain things you just don't want to do that. Next question. What's good way for couples to manage their finances personally and interpersonally? This is something really for individual couples, I think, to work out between themselves. I strongly do recommend having joint accounts. Joint accounts, I think, is it shows that you trust one another when you have a joint account. So joint accounts are good. I don't necessarily have a problem. In fact, I don't know why it does. This is a little bit because I don't know why it talks about when you're married, you should give your wife a set amount of money that they can do with what they want to. But in the age of equality, it could work the other way around, where the wife works and they have to give the husband a set amount to do do what he wants with. But I think he's going to work it through as a couple. How you want to do it. But I think when you have joint accounts, it does send a message of trust, that we trust each other. For that. I think it's I don't have a problem. Each couple should think about retirement. So the wife should have a retirement plan as well as the husband. I think that's sensible. And I'd also I want to stress this as well. Life insurance. I believe every family should have life insurance. You should think about a policy if you're married and the husband dies, and he's the main breadwinner. How are you going to manage? How are you going to cope with your family and children? Should we expect to rely on brethren to help you out? I think where we can, we should try and help ourselves out first. So and if the wife dies, and she's been the major factor in looking after the children, it may mean husband may have to quit their job. So at least having like a life insurance policy enables them to live on funds to do that. So where you're able to, or you can, every couple should take out as much as you can, small life insurance policies. It doesn't cost, for £10,000-20,000 life insurance policy, it's £3-4 a month. It's not expensive. Okay, so I would advise that. Next question. Usually the people believe in a good or the best investment to buy a house and afterwards restore it and give it in rental to receive back your investment. Is this still a good idea? When we know the economic growth stopped because of the pandemic, is it still a good idea when already having debt? All right. By the way, Sabbath is out here in the UK, but I know it's still Sabbath elsewhere. So again, I'll try and be careful how I answer these questions. All right. Even in the pandemic situation we find ourselves in, people still need a place to stay. People still need to rent. In fact, the rental market is still positive, although some tenants have gone into arrears because they've lost their jobs or they haven't had income coming in. In principle, I think it's a good investment. Buying up a house and doing it up and renting it out, restoring it, renting it out, because you're buying the house undervalued. Again, if you've got spare funds to do so, yeah. In my opinion, you have what good debts and bad debts. Okay, so not all debt is necessarily bad. Bad debt is where you're living beyond your means. If you're living beyond your means, in other words, spending beyond your means, and you're getting into debt, that's a bad debt. Okay, that's not a good way to manage your money. If you're in debt because you have taken a mortgage to buy a house, all right, I would consider that to be a good debt. All right, in other words, a debt, an acceptable debt. Okay, but what we should try and do is try and pay that debt off as soon as we can, because once you've got that debt paid, you are free. You don't have that burden. Another form of debt is if you need a business loan, business debt to get your business going. All right, that is acceptable. Again, you've got to manage the risks. We call that OPM, by the way, other people's money, taking other people's money and making risk managed investments with that money, with the idea that we pay that money back and we have some for ourselves. So in principle, having rental properties, I don't have an issue with that, but you don't want to be in a situation where you're heavily into debt and bear the risk, by the way, that if you buy a property to restore it and you can't rent it out straight away, you still got the mortgage and the expenses to pay. So you just need to weigh up, can you afford to take this investment or not? So again, that's really that's something to consider. But in my opinion, we have good debt and we have bad debt. Business debt, if it's done on a risk managed basis, giving us return on our investment, then I don't see that as a major problem. When I spend money, or for those in my household, or those who know me personally, when I do spend money, which is not often, when I do spend money, I look for two things. I look for value for money, and I look for return on investment. I mean, that's everything, even when I buy food. So when I'm on the road, I've got a choice. I can get like a little takeaway. It's going to cost me £6-7. Even if I get like a veggie burger from Burger King or McDonald's, it's like £7. Or I can, for £2-3, I can buy a loaf of bread, get some hummus and salad, and make my own sandwiches, and have leftovers. So to me, I think, first of all, if I make my own sandwiches, it's healthier, and secondly, I'm not spending as much money, so it's not easy, it's better return on investment. It's actually better value for money. So anyway, that's me. But also, when we do take the issue of value for money and return on investment, we shouldn't rule out enjoyment. In other words, I know some people like crisps, some people like now and then some crunch or some things like that, and I'll say, okay, fine. You know what? The money spent buying that and the pleasure you get back, once in a while, that's also a positive return on investment. So I don't want to be too harsh. I'm just giving you my personal thoughts. But when I started out with my house, my major goal, my major priority in everything I did was to pay that mortgage off, because I knew once I paid that mortgage off, then I'm going to have less financial burdens. If I lose my job, if I come across hard times, then at least I know I've got a house and roof over my head.